Morning, Joanne.
Morning, honey.
I'm just going to put myself on mute and share a screen, and I've got to email somebody who needs the link. So. Morning, Jo.
Morning, how you doing?
I'm a bit ragged around the edges this morning, but I'm good. So I've got Joanne and I've got Jo. I think Tracy's definitely joining us.
Excellent.
So just have a little think about what co-production means to you. Morning, Sasha. Oh. Hi, Sasha.
Morning.
Morning, bright and early. I'm loving the commitment on a Saturday morning.
Peter and I only went to bed. Well, Peter didn't go to bed. I came to bed after being up all night with him at 8 o'clock, and he fell asleep at 9.
Oh, Jo, is he still asleep now?
Yeah, Pat's with him now. He's going to wake him up at 11.
Oh, that's tough.
So I'm a little bit tired at the minute. So if I'm not my full self, that's why.
Well, if you nod off, we'll just let you snooze.
So we have a nap. I'm hoping Pat's going to bring me a cup of tea.
We'll just give you a nudge and tell you to turn your video off.
That's it, or at least the audio if I start snoring.
So I didn't just invent it in my head that Saturday morning was a good idea. It was quite popular when we put out the survey for co-producers to kind of indicate what would suit them, and Saturday was one that would, but I wouldn't expect huge amounts of people to come, actually, to be fair.
I'd have thought it's probably because partners are home to look after kids if they've got kids. And
yeah, I think it's one of those things where if you feel in the mood, or your morning's gone well and you've got the things done you want to do and you feel like hanging out with some people, then you'll jump in. But if life's gotten in the way, Saturday's the day that's going to happen, I guess. So
unless you're me, and then you ignore all of that and instead, because it's a little bit of normality and saneness
and talking to adults and
ignoring children for an hour.
I love that, Joanne. I love your honesty. Hello, we've got a few more people joining us. Let me go down. Hello, Emily. Hello, Rachel. Nice to see you again. Thank you for joining. Hello.
I haven't got my camera on because my hair is an absolute mess. So I will be talking. It's just, yeah, my hair is an absolute blooming mess.
That's okay. Co-productive spaces are non-judgmental. So camera off, camera on, hair a mess. What I love about co-production is it's come as you are and do as you feel.
I have just
So-
realised I've spent the whole of co-production week with boobs behind my ear.
With boobs, but what?
Behind my ear. I forgot to put them away. There is a reason I'm a breastfeeding peer supporter, so they're for a reason. I forgot to put them away, so it must have looked a little bit weird at some points.
Morning, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, morning.
We're not started yet. We're just
Having a
waiting
laugh.
for a few more people. There's a little question up there. Don't worry, I won't put anyone on the spot. It's just something to think about.
Cool.
I was going to say, to be fair, Joanne, I haven't actually noticed them in the background, to be fair. So you were right.
Just a couple of freaky dolls and some boobs. It's all right.
Mike will be wondering what he's wandered into here.
Sorry, Michael. Just realising that I've spent the whole of co-production week with my breastfeeding peer supporter equipment out on show.
Right.
And normally, for big meetings, I strategically put at least the demonstration breasts away, but I forgot to do that.
Right.
So if people don't know who I am and what I do, it could look a bit dodgy.
So, given that we're kind of doing introductions in a way, what we don't tend to do is go around and say, because people might not want to say, they might want to just kind of be quiet and listen, and that's fine. So we don't want to put people on the spot. But if you do want to introduce yourself, please pop it in the chat box, and I will get started. Saturday morning's got a different feel to it, so we're going to take it easy today. I stood up yesterday, so I'm going to sit down. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Okay. So one of the things I struggle with is to kind of switch between sharing my screen, clicking the mouse, coming back onto camera, muting. I find it really struggling to do all of that. So it might be a bit ragged around the edges, but just bear with if you'd be so kind. Okay, so I'm just posing a little question. What does co-production mean to you? You can introduce yourself in the chat box. If you've had a great answer of what it means to you, you can pop that in the chat box if you want, but we'll come back to the question. I thought it might be helpful just to kind of warm up brain cells if I explained what it means to me, well, what it meant to me yesterday, what it generally always means to me, and what it meant to me first thing this morning. Because one of the things with co-production is that there's no one definition, and I think for each piece of co-productive work that can change, but for each person in the co-productive work it can change as we go through it. Morning Tracy, morning Mariam. Tracy, Mariam, we're just introducing ourselves in the chat box in the normal way if we want to. We don't have to do that if we don't want to, and we're just kind of throwing around this idea at the moment, and I'm going to explain what it means to me. So I'll move on to my next slide. So yesterday I saw this Winnie the Pooh thing with Christopher Robin putting, I don't know if he's putting on his Wellington boots. Oh yeah, he's putting them on. And it made me think of co-production yesterday. They call it an expedition, but I think that, it's an expedition. It's always an expedition. You need a couple of people in it, and sometimes it's a bit tricky. Like it can be a bit of a push and a shove. You need a bit of resistance within that, but it's because Pooh is having to lean against Christopher Robin to make sure he doesn't go flying backwards. And I think it's about the relationship. It's about not always agreeing. It's about having that bit of push me, pull you, and that idea that you're going on a journey together. So that's what it meant to me yesterday. What co-production always means to me is John Lewis. This is him as when he was young. John Lewis is an American congressman from Alabama. He did a lot of civil rights activism with Martin Luther King, and he talks about getting into good trouble. The idea that we can't change things you don't have to change things with trouble, but basically in Alabama, he was told by his mother growing up, don't get into trouble because it was dangerous. You're a black man. In Alabama, it's dangerous to get into trouble. But he kind of flipped that and said, to change things, I need to get into good trouble. And sometimes he was arrested. He's quite elderly now. But he's an inspiration of mine, because sometimes we need to step out of our comfort zone. And one of the themes this week has very much been bravery. That kind of courage that it takes to step out of our comfort zone and co-produce. So I'm just going to come off the sharing, and I've got a box of something I want to show to you. I'm letting my neurodiversity go completely this morning.
It's beautiful.
So when I woke up this morning, I thought, no, this is what co-production means to me this morning. It's all these flipping vegetables. Oh, can you still see my vegetables?
Yeah. Why do you have a box of vegetables there?
Because I don't know what to do with them.
I think you meant to eat them.
But the point about co-production for vegetables, sorry, I've got in a muddle with my mouse, is there are no new vegetables in the world, right? No one ever sends me a new vegetable that no one's ever heard of. They're always the same sorts of vegetables. And what I tend to do with them is do the same things with the same sorts of vegetables. And what happens is people go, oh, and even I think, oh, no, not ratatouille again. Like, courgettes are a staple. Aubergines. I know my youngest daughter hates aubergines, but I cook them anyway. So and now I've got two of these, and I think they're fennel. I don't know what to do with them. I don't think I like them. The point about the vegetables is, if I could co-produce a meal with people who had knowledge of vegetables and cooking, there is a better chance we wouldn't just keep eating ratatouille, and I wouldn't keep handing the cabbages over the fence to the neighbour's rabbits, because I don't know what to do with them. So if my children take pity on me, and they're nearly adults now, one of them is an adult, if they take pity on me and we come around that problem, sometimes we end up with something a bit better than if I'd have been left on my own to do it. But the reason I like the vegetable thing this morning, and I'll have probably gone off it tomorrow, and apologies if you don't kind of join me in that moment, is that when we're talking about co-production, it always feels like it's never, there's nothing, although it's new and exciting, the things that matter to us are all fairly similar. There's nothing really new there, and yet somehow we just keep doing the same old thing. Like, I just keep cutting up that aubergine and sticking it with some courgettes and going, woohoo, dinner, and everyone goes, oh no, that's really not hitting the spot. So that's what co-production meant to me this morning. Tomorrow, maybe I won't think about co-production tomorrow, maybe I'll have a day off. But what are people saying it means to them? What do people feel? Is anyone say, here we go. So, Joe, do you want to read out what you said, or do you want me to? Joe Richardson.
Umi, I could do it, I don't mind. Co-production to me means collaborating with others to move forward with a unified voice and having taken everyone's voice into consideration.
I love that one. So ideally the vegetables would have a voice as well in the co-production. The aubergine would go, please, could you do something different with me this time?
No more cubes.
I love that idea of the unified voice. Rachel Roach. Rachel, do you want me to read that out for you? You can put your hat, I can read it out for you. Rachel Roach has said, co-production to me means, although there are no new discovered veggies, the way we may cook or use them can be a different help to more people. Exactly. Exactly that. Joanne Webb. Sorry, Joe. You go, Joanne. Joe Richardson.
Oh no, I was just about to say, Joe Webb has said something above, so not to miss that one, but you've just started saying it, so.
All right. Do you want me to read it out for you, Joanne Webb? Or do you want to do it yourself?
It's all right. Be a bit wrong talking about having a voice and not using it, wouldn't it? To me, co-production is having a voice and knowing that it can be heard. It's given me a purpose again, because I was a mum. My eldest is 18 and I'd been a mum for 18 years. I've now got 5 kids. I'd forgotten what my name was, but now thanks to doing co-production, I know that I'm Jo. I'm completely separate to mum. I do have mum moments, don't get me wrong, but it's been great to actually have a reason to do things again. And that's what co-production is to me. It's a reason to do things.
I think that's a really key point. We don't, although lots of things can be co-produced, we don't have to all co-produce all of them all of the time. I think the thing that will bring us into the conversation and the work is the reason for it, you know, the thing that we're interested in. So yeah, I think that's a really important point. I've just noticed Sue Roach is saying hello from Southend YMCA. The Southend YMCA have been stalwarts this week, so lovely to see you. Sasha's here as well. Emily, who's one of the youth commissioners, hello Emily, has said, co-production means to me acting for the greater good, which also happens to coincide with the good for our individual selves. I think that's lovely. I mean, they're all lovely. And I love the fact that each one is different, because we're all different, but there are some similarities. So maybe time to move on, unless anyone else has anything else to add around that. Back to screen share. Right, this is the bit I struggle with, bear with. Right. So I just wanted to share some of the things that people have been talking about this week. These are some of the conversations that some of you were in on the mental health session that we did on Wednesday. We didn't just choose to do mental health off the top of our heads. We did ask people when we were putting together the programme what was mattering most to them, I suppose, in their town, in their lives, and mental health came out top, which is probably, you know, understandable, and also because we're in the middle of this global pandemic. I think, you know, mental health is always an issue because everyone has mental health and well-being, but you know, we've been in tough times, and I just wanted to kind of feed some of this back through into the conversation. You know, we've got perinatal there. I mean, all of life is there, and I think that's what's interesting when you have a co-productive conversation. It ends up being really broad and quite. If I say similar, that sort of makes it sound like samey, and I don't mean that, but there's always similar themes. So Sasha has said, morning all, I think it's important to remember co-production, whole process delivery and evaluation, not just engagement and consultation. Oh, Sasha, you're so on my level with that. So this is a real, and I think Jo Webb, you would, this is what you've been saying all week, yeah, and you said totally, Sasha, this idea that we do co-production end to end, that we sit down and start at the very beginning. We don't just kind of get invited in just to do a bit of engagement or to consult on something that's already decided. And that's kind of why I'm running these What Next sessions, because I'd like you to set your priorities so that I can then go back to where decisions and power lie at the moment. We're hoping to change that in a good trouble sort of way. And say, look, these are the priorities locally. We'd like to co-produce around these. Let's start those conversations. So that's kind of what I'd like to start to unpick a little bit for you next, if that's all right. Is anybody wanting to, because when I'm showing the slides, I'm a little bit, I can't see everybody. So if I'm missing things, can people just interrupt me, please, or put it in the chat and I'll see it. Okay, so what's been happening this week so far? I've just showed the word cloud. I'm getting a little bit bored of me speaking. One of the weaknesses, I think, in the whole programme is that we pulled it together in the middle of COVID, and different people have been involved with different bits. But going back to Sasha's point, you know, there's I haven't had enough co-delivery, if you like, for my liking. So that's something I'm definitely going to be taking forward for next time, so that, you know, when we do it next year, it's not just going to be me all the time. But, you know, I'm a great fan of Arthur Ashe's saying, which is start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. So it would have been easy to kind of duck out of co-production week this week, co-production week this year, and say, oh, it's too hard to do, it's virtual, we can't do face-to-face. But I think it was really important to just get on with it and see what happens. And I cannot tell you how humbling it's been. 80 people signed up. You know, I was thinking maybe we'd be lucky if we got 20. And I would say that there are community members in there. There's not enough community members in there, but there are quite a lot of community members in there. And I'll be writing a kind of short infographic report, so you'll all understand with who was in the room and who was missing. But the conversations have been brilliant, and we've kind of tried to walk the line between putting in a little bit of structure so people don't feel overwhelmed, but leaving spaces and gaps for people to contribute and guide and co-produce conversation, really. So here's a question: what makes a good life for you in Southend on Sea? I'm going to be quiet and let you have a think about it. And I didn't want to, you could draw it and hold it up. I don't know if that does mirror image or not. We'll try it.
I think so.
I'll draw something. You could sing it, you could say it, you can write it in the chat box, you can sign it. You know, it doesn't always have to be dry and boring. So I'm going to just zip it, give you a few minutes. What makes a good life for you in Southend on Sea? I'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Oh, Jessica, do you mean as it is now, or what would be a good life in Southend? What picture that would look like?
I think both, or if it's two pictures, you can do both. I don't want to make extra work for you, Joe.
Okay.
I actually don't know how to draw the thing that I'm thinking of, so. And I'm a terrible, I don't like be judgy or anything, but I'm not gifted in the drawing department. I won't let that stop me.
I have no utensils, so I'm going to have to just sing it or say it.
Or you can type it in the chat box if you prefer.
Oh, that's true.
Just realised I absolutely no people in those photos. And they're a bit blurry.
That's all right.
I was trying
Still
to
see what they are.
capture a diversity of Southend, really. Right, so people are starting to say, Marion has said, having easy access to school via public transport. I'm just going to come off the share a minute. Okay. Joe, I love it. I can see people. I can see somebody at the bottom, looks like they've fallen or something.
I know, that's kids playing. It literally is just people. It's community
Nice.
support.
So community support.
Yeah.
So that idea of support. Emily said bigger bins on the seafront. That's so interesting. Do you know what, Emily? I was down doing a beach clean in a very bad fashion because I don't like bending over. It was windy. Anyway, the point was we had a conversation with the Lions who were down there, and they were saying that the bins aren't big enough and the rubbish blows out and blows back on the beach. So bigger bins, we found half a boat as well, and that wouldn't fit in the bin. So it's kind of the size, as you're saying, of the bins. More spaces for youth, so young people to be out with the expectation of spending money. Do you mean you want without the? Do you mean without the? Oh yeah, without. So it does say that. So somewhere where young people can go without them necessarily having to be consumers in a space, spending money. More green spaces, more community events. Recognition of the diversity in Southend. Oh, this is brilliant stuff. The diversity in Southend and appreciation of that. More community classes available. Were you in the conversation about ways to wellbeing and mental health on Wednesday, Emily? Because that links to that. Advertise to the wider public, those who might not be looking out for them. Better transportation, safer spaces for older people to meet and have a chat. There's loads there. Mike, thank you, Emily. I'm distracted because Mike's holding something up. I think I can see what it is. Hold it up a bit higher, Mike. Black Lives Matter. Exactly. There's a vigil tomorrow, actually, at Warrior Square at 6 p.m. I think lights for people who've lost their lives to the system. What does it say? I have lived. Is that something about mental health?
Yeah, so it says, I have lived mental health experiences and I need help. So it's dashed. So Black Lives Matter is in solid, yeah, and this is dashed because we're talking about this, which is great, and we're demonstrating, but there needs to be more demonstration of this, which is why I put it in a dashed format. Do you understand?
Have you written that mirror image?
No.
Oh, it's okay. So you're saying, so one of the conversations we had in the mental health discussion on Wednesday was around Black and minority ethnic mental health services and there being some, and particularly around men. Is that kind of where you're going with that?
Not particularly. I wasn't. All I was saying was that, so Black Lives Matter we're doing in Southend, which is great, and we're protesting and we're being very public about it. What not being very public about is the people with lived mental health experiences aren't getting the help that they need. We're not demonstrating that publicly, and I think perhaps there might come a time where we have to do that.
I think
so we
might
actually have to get a placard up and stand there outside the forum and go, there's people here who are not getting the help that they need.
I can honestly say I think we're a couple of doorsteps away from that right now, especially with some of the things that have happened this week.
Yeah, that very much. So I'll just hold up my drawing. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I told you I was a bit challenged.
I can't see what it is.
So basically, it's a safety net.
Ah.
It looks a bit like a hammock, but I just feel like if we're not safe, we're not you know, we can't do anything really. And and that definitely speaks to the mental health demonstrations that you're talking about, Mike, in the sense that, you know, if people's needs aren't being met in that mental health space, people become very unsafe very quickly. Mm. And that's children and adults. And we've had a very tragic example of that this week, which has touched many of us. Sasha had her hand, I don't know if it's up. Was it a raised hand, Sasha, or was it a clap hand?
It was a clap for your delightful picture, Jessica.
Oh, thank you.
But I did write something in the chat.
Yeah, so you've written the passion for change to make things better, the council talking the right talk, feeling hopeful that together we can walk the walk. Black Lives Matter is, so there's a weekly, every Wednesday, 6 p.m. outside Victoria Station as well. Is that the one where you take the knee in the round there, or how does that work, Sasha? I've not been to that one.
I think to be honest, I've only seen it on Facebook, but it looks like they take the knee for 1 minute at 6 o'clock every Wednesday by where those statues are opposite the station.
Thank you for highlighting that, because I think that's one of the things that the conversations I've had with members in the Black community locally, saying we can't kind of lose the momentum with this. You know, this is a long haul. Yes, there's a lot of kind of media coverage around it, but that will fade away and the systemic inequalities will remain. And I know that it's not, there's lots of intersectionality, there's lots of overlap between some of these injustices. So mental health, ethnicity, disability. I was having a conversation with somebody, a colleague and a friend last weekend, and she said, you know, if you think about kind of injustice, if you're a disabled Black transgender person, then you know, you really are kind of up against it in terms of the system. So I'm going to go up to Joe Richardson. So you said better support systems with more availability for those who need it quickly and can't wait. More special educational needs schools, as the two we have are completely oversubscribed. More training for school staff. More understanding and support for autistic kids and young adults. More people on the streets.
Police.
More police. More police on the streets. More clubs and groups for autistic kids. PDA, so that's
pathological demand avoidance.
Yeah, pathological demand avoidance, kids and young adults. Sensory areas and shopping areas. We should put you in charge of building towns, Joe, because
it'll just be one big autistic like county.
But we kind of know this, don't we? That if we make things accessible for all, it's better for all.
Yes.
Not just the people that may have a particular disability or need. More see, this came up yesterday in a conversation I had. Paediatricians who can assess autism, or people in the mental health service who can, because sometimes people with autism, adults and children, there's a big gap, because this service says, well, it's not a learning disability, and this service says, well, it's not mental health. So
the problem is the fact that they're kind of missing. I will try really hard to keep this short and not get on my soapbox. The autistics don't struggle with being autistic. They struggle with how they are treated because they are autistic, and the fact that this world isn't designed for autistics. The support structure isn't in place for autistics because the global understanding of who we are isn't there yet. As you said, is it a learning disability? Is it a mental health? It's neither. But autistic individuals, and especially kids and young adults, suffer badly with mental health issues, but because they have the label of being autistic, they often don't get that service, because there comes the argument of, oh, well, autism isn't covered under the umbrella of mental health. Well, it's like, well, no, that's not what the issue is here. The issue is the underlying mental health issues that are a comorbid presentation. This is where there needs to be a lot more understanding and differentiating between, just because they've got an autism label doesn't mean there's nothing else going on, and doesn't mean that everything that's going on in them is to do with them being autistic. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I think for me it's a little bit of, I mean, it's I'm touching on what Rachel Roach has written, which I'll read out in a moment, but it's this idea that it's how people experience the world, and whilst labels are helpful, each person, whatever the label they've got, will have different issues and support needs. So if we have services that say, well, we'll only work with people with that label or that label, then already you've got a bit of a problem in the system. What Rachel has said is that everyone experiences mental health, and that's true. It's a spectrum, so it doesn't care about who you are, how old you are. But she's definitely said the services are not helping properly, and people are struggling, and it's that kind of prevention and to stop that escalation. And I think that's something that's been clear when we've talked this week in the mental health session, is that I really learned that people working in early years are saying, actually, we're seeing children who are struggling at a very young age. Now, I've worked in adult mental health services and naively just didn't really consider that. So whenever we try to say, well, it can only be this, or it can only be that, it can only be adults, it can only be children, it can only be autism, we're in trouble, I think. So
I completely agree. I mean, my son, he's now 5, and he experienced such trauma at school just by being in school that his mental health absolutely crashed. And now he's not at school anymore. He's a school refuser because of the trauma he experienced. And that isn't something that even paediatricians acknowledge, is the fact that 4-year-olds can suffer from mental health issues. And they have to go, no, you got to wait for CAMS, and that's going to be a 3-year waiting list. And then you go to CAMS, and then they're useless. And then the poor child gets shuffled pillar to post until they're an adult, and then they can sometimes get a decent service.
So we know that UMS, which is the Young Person's Mental Health Service, is being recommissioned currently, and I think there is a survey. I think there's a survey out, but I also know that the commissioning is being led out of another part of Essex. Southend aren't leading it. And I have had a conversation with the commissioners in Southend, and the commissioners in Southend are saying, we want the lead commissioning body, which is, I think, West Essex, to come and talk to groups, not just one group of young people, but lots of young people. Yeah. So that's something that I just wanted to kind of pop out there, because we've got youth commissioners on the call, and this is a theme that's coming up. But what I don't understand, and I probably need to go away and find out about it, is another commissioner elsewhere said, in terms of sometimes mental health services, like the NHS provided ones, it's dictated. There's not a lot of wriggle room or co-production available in terms of the service, because it's coming down from national government what needs to be in the service. Now, I don't know how much flex there is in that myself, so I probably need to go away and find that out a bit more and be a bit more informed, so I can speak about it in a more informed way. But if that is the case, I think that we're saying in this week and I've heard it before, that we have gaps, big gaps in service, and the gaps in service appear to be, to me, younger people who are left without a service, who escalates. It affects the whole family, and then everybody's in this, you know, unsupported, unsafety net situation where people are becoming worse. There isn't. Sorry, Joanne, you were going to say something.
That's right. It's just, if you're lucky enough to have a diagnosis as well.
Yeah.
Because it takes so long to just get that diagnosis to start off with. Never mind, I mean, I'm taking my co-production head off. I'm putting my mum head on for a minute. I've got an 18-year-old with suspected high-functioning autism who is currently transitioning from female to male. And I've got a 10-year-old with ADHD, suspected high-functioning autism, but we're not going to push for that diagnosis because he wants to join the army when he's older. But there's so much that you have to do just to be heard and to be believed about what your children are going through. And sometimes, never mind everything else you're dealing with and the fact that that's got such a detrimental effect on your own mental health, seeing your children go through what they're going through daily and not being able to help and support them, it's traumatizing for us as well. And sometimes the only places we can turn to are the places they're trying to replace.
Yeah. It's also, the waiting lists are disgraceful. Absolute. I mean, I know children who have been waiting for diagnosis for 8 years and they don't get extra support at school because they don't have the diagnosis. So they end up getting absolutely destroyed at school because they haven't got the support, they're not getting the qualifications, they're labelled as naughty or dumb or slow. But if they had the correct support in place, then they could be acing it. But they're pushed to the side because they are misunderstood. And so waiting lists, I mean, we have to wait 18 months between paediatrician appointments. Which is, it's in this day and age, it shouldn't happen. I mean, 18 months is a lifetime for some kids. It's a long time to go without support, and the parents. So I think that is something that desperately needs somehow, if at all possible, sorted out.
And it's remembering that we don't necessarily want these appointments and diagnoses for medication issues.
No.
One of mine is medicated, one of mine isn't. But it's the extra support that we can't get without that diagnosis. We can't get them that one-to-one or an extra TA in the class without that diagnosis.
Yep. We
can't get that little
HCP.
Oh, don't get me started. He's only got an IEP, not an EHCP. So it's everything, like, I don't know if you can hear it in the background at the moment, but one of our issues is compulsion, and he cannot not steal from the kitchen. So if you can hear it in the background, an alarm going off, we've actually got an alarm on our kitchen door to stop him going in there and stealing the family food that's supposed to last us for the month, because he will just go out there and take what he wants, because there's the triggers aren't there to stop him going and doing that. No matter what we do, he still will just go off and try and do it, but the support isn't there to help us learn ways to deal with it. We've had to join support groups on Facebook to get suggestions from other SEN parents of how to do it. And that's the kind of thing that should be coming from the official support groups and should be coming from our paediatricians and the Lighthouse.
Yeah. And
it doesn't.
So just to kind of pull it together a little bit, I think co-production ideas or processes would want to sit down and get people in the room around this. Because I mean, I came into this job off the back of working at the Recovery College, and I do think we created a richer experience for students because we put professionals alongside people with lived experience. And whilst I don't think that people with lived experience of anything should feel that they have to co-produce or be involved in this or that, you know, because actually you do have a right to receive a universal service like health service in your moments of need. I also do think that with COVID and the economic situation as it's going to be, that we're going to have to use co-production as creatively as possible to get into those places and spaces that services are failing to do now, so that we're not failing people in the same way. And one of the things that struck me lately is trying to treat individuals. So, you know, we'll take a child over there and do something, but actually for me, you know, that whole Joe Webb's just touched on it, that whole family thing, you know, because everybody's in it together. I know not everybody's in a family. Some people aren't in families. Some people live individually. But where there are children and parents. So what I've just made some notes about the things that people have said. What would make a good life? And it's a bit like the box of vegetables. I'm not going to lie. Nobody said going to the moon, for example, or I don't know, life on Mars. People come back to the things that matter to them, and what I've written down is I've written community events, I've written community support, I've written transport, so Marion said getting to school safely, bigger bins on the seafront, so that kind of idea around waste and not polluting our environment, green spaces, community classes, which anyone who knows me knows I'm obsessed with classes. So Emily Harris, you and I definitely need to have that conversation and hook in some more people around that. This idea of we're not doing the prevention stuff well enough in SEND for children, and this, going back to Mike's point about mental health services being so something or another at the moment, I don't even know what the word is, that we're kind of we're going to this point where we might be making some good trouble, is, you know, that it's becoming really urgent. And I think what's come out of this co-production week so far is that whenever we talk, we end up talking about mental health, whether we choose to talk about mental health as like this is the mental health session, or whether we talk about what's really important to us. So I guess the next bit, just to try and do before we wrap up this morning, is say, can we kind of set some priorities? If I switch screen to another screen and I type up what I'm saying, then we can order them. And I know we shouldn't rank priorities because I know they're all equally important. But and I'm not saying we'll order them and then we'll only work on one. I think maybe a better thing to do actually would be to say who's interested in those things, and then I can make sure that I'm inviting people back into the conversations. That's probably better actually than. But just for my own kind of interest, what's the biggest priority out of the things that we've discussed this morning? If you could just type what your, like in 1 or 2 words, what your priority is, and that would be really helpful, I think, just to guide us. Thank you. I'm just reading the chat box, and I think we've kind of got ourselves into a little bit of a pickle as a society, because labelling people with diagnoses is in some ways to be avoided, which is what Sasha's saying, because mental health can fluctuate and GPs don't want children labelled for the rest of their lives. That's what Sasha said. But on the flip side is that parents are saying, actually, you can't get a service or any support if you don't have a diagnosis. So that's kind of a system failure, really, because it drives people down the diagnosis route to get support. And really what we're saying is people should be able to get support without a diagnosis. Tracy said, my role is to help send families co-produce services where there are gaps, and would be very happy to help organise the space to have this conversation. Thank you, Tracy. Oh, I'm behind everybody. Okay, so these are this is kind of the top priorities. Help for kids that need support, send provision support, improving mental health services for young people, also training. Mental health, yeah. Communities. Emily said, creating safe green spaces where young people can be without feeling. I think that really links actually into mental health, because we know green spaces are good for well-being. I think feeling that you're a consumer, that you can't be somewhere there without spending money is tricky. You know, young people don't always have money, and you know, life isn't about spending money. It's just about hanging out with your friends, I'm guessing.
And we had that when we were younger. Our local schools used to have youth clubs that were open of an evening in the sports halls. And there's nothing like that for our youth out there at the moment. Nothing. Unless you want to pay and join the Scouts or the Cadets, or there is no youth clubs apart from Triple T's. And the waiting list for the Triple T's is so long, it's ridiculous.
So are we sort of making a link here to the support that the community? So hold on. The spaces that we have for young people that will enhance their well-being. So green spaces, whatever those spaces are, and some community support around families and young people that's co-produced, so that we kind of do some of that preventative work and co-produce that with, you know, Tracy's making an offer, the mental health services, so that then people aren't being escalated and being left and getting worse, and then putting pressure on more limited services, because there are only so many paediatricians, there are only so many psychiatrists, and if we leave children and families and they get worse, the demand is greater than what's out there. Does that sound like I should draw it, but you saw my drawing earlier? So Sasha said a purpose-built youth hub would be awesome. See, this is why co-production is brilliant, because you've sorted it all out over here. I must admit, it's a bit, my brain is a little bit fried, because you know, you guys have got it. You know what you're doing.
To be honest, we don't even need to purpose build a building either. We've got so many empty flipping shops on the high street and places like that. Take the children that are looking for somewhere to go, so they're loitering places and looking like they're causing trouble when they're not, and give them a safe space. Turn one of those great big empty shops into a safe place.
Or even office buildings, the amount of empty office buildings we've got, you could clear out a floor of that, and Christ, think what activities you could do. You could even split it off into several sections, like an art area and a computer area and a running around area and a climbing area. It would be perfect for our kids.
I'm really interested in what young people would like to see in the spaces, whether they're green or indoors. And whether they want adults in there, and if they did, what the purpose of the adults would be, or whether they want it youth led. Because I was listening to something last night, and it's called Radical Help. It's a really good book by Hilary Cottam, who's a bit of a kind of guru in the field of co-production and service design. And she described a program called Loops, which was for young people, and it was about giving young people choosing experiences, and they were getting some really good feedback from the young people. Young people were going and they were enjoying it, and it was improving all the things that we're talking about in ways. But when she went back to present it to local authority, apparently all the professionals got on the phones and disengaged because they thought it looked too risky. So I think that's one of the tensions when we're talking about youth is, you know, if we said we wanted, I'm not saying we would, but if we were saying, oh, well, you know, a youth-led space, you know, that might not pass the kind of risk assessments for funders. But equally, if we don't try some of these things, we know what happens at the other end, that children and young people are at risk anyway, because they don't have these access to these opportunities, and mental health and so forth can decline, and, you know, things can get pretty bad for people. The YMCA is sorting all of this out over here. I think it's amazing. I think you've co-produced it, guys. I just need telling where to take it next.
That's easy. We've commandeered the Curzal, so we just need the permission to use that, and YMCA are going to organise it. It's done.
So who can take this forward? Who wants to come around this to take this forward?
Me.
Okay, so what I'm doing after every session is sending out an email to just kind of capture what was said and say next steps. So the next step on this one, I think, is going to be, we want the Curzal. We need someone who knows Ali Griffin. That's what Sasha says. We need some lottery funding. I think this is a beautiful, what a thing to happen on a Saturday morning. Yes, Rachel. Okay, and my final question was, what issue can we come around to co-produce together and talk about with pride and joy during co-production week next year? I'm thinking this is it, the Curzal project. Let's go big, people.
Damn straight. Go big or go home. Be warned, Jessica, you know me, that I'm going to say yes to everything. It's sort of like, I'll do it. I'm in.
I think what's really important about co-production, it doesn't have to be all of the people all of the time doing all of the work. I think if we mapped out a timeline and invite people in, then people can dip in and out as they need to, because, you know, we all have life and so on and so forth. Sasha says she's got a great relationship with the regional lottery lady.
Ooh.
So that's Ruth. I've forgotten her surname. This could be an absolutely stonking project.
Brilliant.
And what I have to do at this point is just keep my zip, because I'm not you know, I'm looking after the process. It's not for me to kind of throw in my ideas. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll send out an email summarising what we've done with the chat. Probably not today, actually. I'll probably do it Monday. And then I will invite in another session around this, maybe in August. I mean, but you can do it on your own. It doesn't have to be through me. You guys can just say, okay, we're gonna crack on with this. I don't have to be part of it, but I'm happy to support you. So if I start the ball rolling, are you all happy for me to share your emails? Because at the moment I'm just sending out BCCs because there are some personal email addresses in there. So if you're not happy for me to share your email, can you just type in the chat box, please?
Oh, our email address.
No, if you don't want me to share your email
Oh, I
address,
see. Oh, no, that's fine.
Just say please don't share it, and I'll BCC you in, or whoever. Okay. You've blown me away. We've got 4 minutes left. This is why co-production is so fantastic. It's just now that it's about them getting the people around it and evolving the idea, and I will do whatever you want me to do in that space. And I guess the other thing with co-production is that things can kind of shift and change depending. But so there's definitely an appetite here to take a Kurzweil idea forward around young people and to hook in all those different elements that you talked around SEND, mental health, support, community support, peer support, support for families.
Yeah, I mean, the Kurzweil is certainly big enough to have, even if it's a separate area that is more, because get a lot of kids together is going to be loud, which a lot of autistic kids can't cope with. So there could actually be an area sort of in the Kurzweil for SEND and autistic kids if they need a break, like a quiet area that also has loads of really cool stuff in it they can get into and enjoy and still get a lot out of, but without feeling that they're missing out because they can't cope with the sensory input from being around all of the kids, if you know what I mean.
I do. I was just quickly, because it was in the news the other day, wasn't it, the Kurzweil? What I'll do is, rather than keep you here on this call whilst I'll go off and do some research. I'll put the update as to where we are at with the Kurzweil, because I know one of the local councillors, Matt Dent, said something about it in the Echo. So I'll pull all that together. I'll send out a kind of where we're up to email, and then you guys can decide what you want to do next. And what I would suggest is, in true co-productive style, is if there's anybody that you think should be in the conversation, try and invite them into the next one. So for example, I would look to get in maybe a children's commissioner or one of the mental health commissioners. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. But have a think about who you think would be the stakeholders around that. Yeah, Southend SEND parents as well.
I can have a word with Maggie, see if she'll come in.
Okay, so people, are there any questions?
Don't think so. I'm all fired up now.
Emily, is this something that actually sounds right for you? Because you're our youth commission member here today, so we're all putting this out there as we'd love to see it as parents, but is it actually something that you like the sound of?
Good question.
Yeah, mindful Emily was talking about green spaces, and Rachel Roach is also here as well. Yeah, Rachel said it will also help raise awareness. I don't know if there's any green space out the back of the Kurzweil. I don't know what it looks like out there. Triple T's.
I don't think it does.
Oh, so that's amazing. We could have an indoor garden at the top of that glass one.
That'd be amazing.
Okay, so I can invite in the Triple T's as well.
Trust Link might like to be involved in the inside garden bit as well.
That's a good idea. Well, I bow to you all. Thank you for coming.
So thank you for hosting.
I'm energized. I don't sound it or look it, but I am energized by this idea. And I'm looking forward to working on this with you and see where we go with it. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day, and catch you all soon, hopefully.
Hopefully see you Monday.
Yeah.
Right.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
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 I've just got to figure out how to get the chat. Oh, there we go. Save chat. Done.
Bye. Have a good
Bye-bye.
weekend.
Bye.